I'm what you'd call a jack of all trades. Good with my hands. A true all-rounder. Specifically, I'm skilled in electrical work, plumbing, and various other repairs. I could practically build a house. However, large jobs from the classifieds website were rare. People usually called me for trivial things. Replacing outlets, or a mixer tap in an apartment, or fixing a water pump at a dacha. The work itself would take about 20 minutes, but most of the time was spent traveling. I earned enough to live on, but I was so tired of running back and forth. I wanted a job where I could work in one place for several hours and get a decent lump sum. It seems the universe heard me. An interesting request popped up on the website from the owner of a small holiday retreat in the countryside. The summer season was over, the guests had left, and the property needed some minor repairs. I was offered a job to live at the retreat for 10 days, fix whatever was broken, and look after the place. Essentially, prepare the premises for new guests. How could I refuse? Finally, I had the chance to be in peace and solitude, without the constant supervision of clients. Plus, the pay was good. After a phone call, the client invited me to his office. He was a serious elderly man who immediately inspired trust. A calm old gentleman who owned a facility for other seniors. Such clients don't usually cheat you out of money. We signed a contract. He transferred an advance payment and gave me the keys, asking me to head to the location as soon as possible, because it had been vacant for a few days. He was worried about trespassers who might break in or smash windows. I assured him I would leave immediately, and I kept my word. I bought groceries for a few days, filled the car with petrol, and entered the address into the navigator. The drive took about 40 minutes. The retreat was in a quiet spot, about 1 kilometer from a small village. I finally turned onto the dirt road. A few minutes of rattling over gravel, and a bright single-story building appeared before me. A large lawn with unevenly mown grass stretched out around it, with a gentle hill behind. The weather was warm but no longer summery. Large clouds hung in the sky. The leaves looked faded in the September sun's rays. A rosebush in the flower bed was slightly withered. The grounds of the holiday home were quite modest, but the owner was right to fear intruders. The location was secluded but open, with no high fences. I got out of the car, anticipating the days ahead in this tranquil corner. Suddenly, my eyes caught sight of 2 figures near the entrance. They were either standing or sitting under a bright yellow canopy, as if hiding in the shade. I thought maybe they were some old folks resting as they passed by, but as I got a little closer, I saw they were just wooden figures, assembled from cut logs and tree branches. Good old folk crafts made by someone with an imagination. A man and a woman in broad-brimmed hats. The hats, of course, were also made of logs. The woman had braids made of some gray yarn and 2 comically protruding breasts. The wooden man had prominent ears, one of which had an earring. Both had eyes made of beer bottle caps, nailed in place. The nail heads served as pupils. The wooden people's expressions seemed surprised, as if they were astonished by my sudden arrival. Joking, I tipped my cap and said, "Good day, good people. I'm here for repairs." It's a habit of mine to talk to inanimate objects. I'm always chatting with tools and various devices while I work. I went up to the porch, inserted the key, but it wouldn't turn. It turned out the door was unlocked. What a forgetful old man, leaving the place open. Or maybe it wasn't the owner's mistake, but someone had already gotten in. I quietly stepped into the small entrance hall, which led straight to a corridor. Cozy. The walls were covered in light wallpaper with a subtle pattern. Doors to the rooms lined both sides of the corridor. Round light fixtures hung from the ceiling, and there was a green carpet on the floor. Everything was simple, not luxurious, but not shabby either. A nice place for elderly people. The only thing was some debris on the carpet. Pieces of wood rot were scattered all over the corridor. What were they doing? Rolling logs on the floor? The owner had told me, "Choose any room you like." I'm not fussy, so any room would do. Right past the first door, I found a perfectly suitable room. Calm colors, a large window, a wide bed, a wardrobe, a nightstand, a lamp, a TV. just right. I immediately imagined settling in for the evening and putting on a film. The drive had been a bit tiring, so I decided to take a shower. That's when the first problems appeared. The round wall light in the bathroom was blinking so much it hurt my eyes, and the shower head hose was leaking. After my shower, I decided to get straight to work. I don't like putting things off. If I notice something, I fix it. I couldn't find new lights in the storage room, but I managed anyway. I took down the faulty one, soldered a couple of diodes, and it worked like new. I replaced the hose and tube for the shower. Then I opened the wardrobe and one of its doors was crooked. Another task. It was entertaining, like playing a quest game, tightening things up and preparing the retreat for its guests. After adjusting the wardrobe door, I went into the corridor, grabbed a broom, and swept the debris off the carpet. It looked much better immediately. Then I went outside to walk around the building. Around the first corner, I met 2 more wooden figures. The one standing closer to the building looked crude, armless, with a square head, holes for eyes, and a knot for a nose. The second one looked much more interesting and funny. A head in a hat, hair made of straw, a long nose, and clearly defined eyes. He was sitting on a tree stump with his legs stretched out and his hands resting on his knees. A real holiday maker, funny guys. I wonder who made them. I continued inspecting the grounds, turned the next corner, and another one was hidden in the bushes. This one was tall, with a torso made of a thick log and a long head. Its eyes were made from red bottle caps, which made it look sinister rather than amusing. "Are you moonlighting as a guard here?" I asked the wooden dummy. Seriously, seeing something like that in the bushes at night would be creepy. I walked past and turned the corner again. And yes, how many of them were there? There were 3 more hat wearers, all made of birch logs. One stood with his hands on his hips, and the others were just standing normally. I looked over this little gang and wondered why so many had been put up. It was clearly overkill for decorations, and they weren't all beautiful. Some were well made, someone had put effort into them, but others were slapped together carelessly. The whole building was surrounded by these wooden people. They must be like garden gnomes. Maybe it's some kind of Slavic tradition. I'm not well versed in that sort of thing. After my walk around the property, I went back inside, checked the other rooms, tested the lights, turned the taps, and shook the beds. A few things needed fixing, but nothing that couldn't be slowly repaired over a couple of days. I could even stretch the work out deliberately, so I wouldn't get bored. I decided I wouldn't do any more work today, and went to cook dinner. I whipped up a simple bachelor meal, sausages, pasta, and ketchup. Evening arrived. I messaged the owner an update on the work I'd done. He didn't reply or even read it. Oh well, it was getting dark. There was absolute silence all around. No wind, no insects. I looked out the window. The wooden figures stood like silent guards. None of them seemed amusing to me anymore. They were strange, and I felt uneasy in their company. Perhaps the feeling was amplified by the solitude. The elderly people who stayed at the retreat probably didn't worry about them. Still, why were there so many? One of them, the tall one with the red bottle cap eyes, stood directly opposite my window. I got the bad neighbor. He was definitely the scariest of the bunch. I reminded myself that I hadn't been a timid child for a long time and turned on the TV. They were showing a culinary competition. It was quite engaging to watch, even if I had no idea what they were cooking. Then something creaked outside the window. It's probably just the trees swaying, I thought. But then another creak, and again, and again. Something grating insistently, about once a minute. I lowered the volume, got out of bed, and peeked behind the curtain. Silence. The wooden figure was in its place. Of course it was just a birch dummy. I stared out the window for a long time, and nothing moved once. I went back to bed. The moment I turned the sound back up, the creaking started again. I jumped up and pulled back the curtain. No one, and such silence, as if nothing had happened. Wait. Was the head of that figure turned like that before? It had been standing sideways to me, looking straight ahead. but now its face was turned towards my window. What on earth? The wind, maybe. Could the wind really twist a log? And it was so calm outside, not a single bush was shaking. It was definitely not the wind. My imagination must be running wild. Or maybe someone is walking around, playing a prank, twisting the wooden people for fun. Could children have sneaked onto the property? I went outside and walked around the building. There was no one there. Just these log people. Their crude figures looked almost alive in the twilight. The bottle cap eyes reflected the light of my torch. The dark holes of their eyes were black with shadow. I walked up to the dummy standing in front of my window and turned its head back into place. It was actually scary to touch it, as if I was touching something supernatural. Stay still, don't twist. Got it? Look at the road. You and I need to guard the house from strangers. I said that to try and ease the tension. It didn't work. The wooden face stared at me with its red caps. The contorted mouth looked like a grimace of disapproval. What the hell did I sign up for? Heading out to the middle of nowhere? I didn't sleep well that night. They say you always sleep poorly in a new place, but I hadn't usually suffered from that. I've been on so many business trips, but this felt genuinely unsettling. Predictably, I dreamed of the wooden people. I woke up in fear. Dawn was breaking outside the window. Phew, what a nightmare. In the sunlight, things felt calmer. The wooden figure outside the window was standing as it had yesterday. Its head was turned towards the road, not the window. Good. I stopped thinking about it. My age didn't allow me to dwell on such nonsense. I got up, washed, and had breakfast. Walking back from the kitchen, I noticed that one of the floorboards in the corridor was very loose. I decided to fix it right away. Then things kept cropping up. I fixed an outlet that had come out of the wall, hammered in some nails, repaired a stool leg, and then got stuck in one room for an hour. The entire air conditioner was clogged with mold. I had to clean it out. I probably need to do the same with the others, I thought, and I was even pleased. It meant I had plenty of work for now. It was quiet outside. No cars drove by, no voices nearby. It was my second day away from people, but I hadn't missed them yet. I was more comfortable on my own. It was just these wooden things that were getting to me. I went out to sit on a bench in the yard, and there they were. Even in daylight, they didn't seem funny. They were ugly somehow. Their faces were glum, their eyes bulging, and wood rot was crumbling from the logs. Perhaps old people had different ideas about beauty. I spent the whole day cleaning the air conditioners and managed to tighten one wobbly bed. In the evening, I was looking forward to a well-deserved rest in front of the TV with a bag of chips. They were showing some kind of thriller drama. The sun set, the room grew dark, and those creaking sounds started again outside. I didn't pay attention at first, but then they continued. I took my mind off the movie and looked out the window. The tall dummy stood motionless in the bushes. The creaks were coming from the other side of the building. But that evening, everything could be blamed on the weather. A strong wind had picked up, and the trees were swaying. I went back to bed and finished the movie. I flipped through the channels. Nothing else interesting was on. I took out my phone, thought about playing a game, but I wasn't in the mood. And all those creaking sounds were still outside. I was sick of it. I got up, looked out the window, and yelled, "How long are you going to stand here?" The last word caught in my throat. The big dummy had vanished. I gripped the curtain so hard I almost tore it down. But a second later it dawned on me. The wind must have just knocked it over, and it rolled into the bushes. Phew! I almost believed that the wooden figures had learned to walk. But I wasn't brave enough to go outside and check my theory. It was late. My shoulders ached from standing all day with my arms raised, cleaning the air conditioners. Time for bed. I lay down, pulled the blanket over my ears to block out the nasty creaking. I thought, tomorrow I should nail those wooden things together more securely so they don't creak. They must have gotten loose. Exhaustion took over. I fell asleep quickly. However, the night was not peaceful. I was woken up by a terrible noise in the corridor. The steps sounded like logs dragging on the floor. When the sounds got closer, my room door trembled. I curled up into a ball. My chest was burning, but my body was shaking as if from cold. Am I going mad? The steps went down the corridor and back again, and then a door slammed shut. Was it left open? I stayed terrified until morning, and when it got light, I looked out the window and saw that the tall dummy was standing in place. What is going on? This is definitely insanity. I went out into the corridor. There was wood rot and shreds of bark everywhere, and I couldn't ask the owner about this. He'd think he hired a crazy person. What should I do? I went outside and examined all the wooden figures. That's when I discovered something strange. 2 of them were not standing as they were yesterday. The tall one in front of my window had shifted slightly. Indentations were left in the ground where it had stood before, and another wooden guard had changed its pose. The one that had its hands on its hips now had them hanging loosely at its sides. What a pair of movers. I managed to identify the ones that came alive after sunset. That meant I had to get rid of them. A couple of them wouldn't be missed. The owner might not even notice. I took an axe and dismantled those 2. Neither offered any resistance. They fell apart easily. I rolled the logs into the bushes, essentially covering up the evidence of my crime. I told the others, "You stand still, or I'll chop all of you up." This was no longer funny. Some kind of devilry was happening at the retreat. I'd be embarrassed to tell anyone about it. That day, I couldn't focus on work. All I managed was sweeping the debris out of the corridor. I spent the evening wondering if I should just write the owner that I wasn't well and leave. Only my pride stopped me. Why should I, a grown man, be afraid of wooden dummies? I handled 2 so I could handle the rest. That evening I watched TV as usual. The front door was locked, and so was my room. While the sun was out, this felt like a solid precaution, but as soon as it got dark, a chill started to creep into my soul. Maybe I should have left after all. I could go crazy out here in the wilderness. I sat there staring at the screen, terrified. I didn't understand the movie. Then another quiet creak came from outside the window. Damn it! I should have broken them all up immediately. I glanced over at the window, and there was the wooden woman with the braids, staring at the glass with her bottle cap eyes. She wasn't moving, just standing there. But it was so terrifying I couldn't take it. I jumped out of bed and fled the room. I ran into another one, and there was another figure in that window, staring at me as if with malice. No, I couldn't stay there. I decided to leave. I ran down the corridor and opened the door. Thankfully, no one was there. I sprinted to the car, barefoot. The wooden figures were standing everywhere outside, but none of them moved. I reached the car, and suddenly, something hit me in the back. It was so hard, so painful. I turned around. A thick branch lay on the ground, and a few steps away stood the one-armed figure. It had thrown its limb at me. Now it was clear. As long as you looked at them, they wouldn't move. Without taking my eyes off the figures, I got into the car, started the engine, and floored it. I had to spend the night near the village, closer to people. The next morning I dared to return, and, wouldn't you know, the wooden figures had returned to their usual places. The woman with the braids and her cavalier with the earring were sitting at the entrance as usual. But this time they wouldn't trick me. I was driven by anger. I took the axe and dismantled all of them. Then I dragged the logs into a pile, poured petrol over them, and threw a match. The bonfire erupted in flames. 3 hours later, there was only ash left on the ground. That was the end of it. All that remained was to figure out how to explain myself to the owner. A convenient lie came to mind. I'd say that before I even arrived, hooligans had sneaked onto the property, vandalized all the wooden figures with spray paint, and then chopped them up. The owner came for an inspection a couple of days later, got out of his car, looked around and asked, "How are things here?" "Good," I replied, and realizing he hadn't noticed the missing items yet, I prepared to lie. "Just forgive me about those wooden people." The old man squinted. "About who?" "Well, your decorations that were standing here." The owner squinted harder. "Which ones?" I continued to explain. "The log scarecrows, they were standing all around." I thought he would finally understand and say, "Ah." But the owner clearly had no idea. "I don't recall any decorations." I was surprised. "So they weren't yours?" The old man shrugged. "Why would I put up scarecrows? It's beautiful here as is. Maybe some locals put them up, damn them. Did you remove them?" I nodded. "Yep." The owner waved his hand. Well, thank God for that. I walked around in shock for the rest of the day. If they weren't his wooden people, then where did they come from? Did they just appear? No, they didn't look like some kind of forest spirit from Slavic myths. It was obvious someone had made them. But who? That mystery remained unsolved. It was a strange story. I'll never forget it.